So many, many thanks. And we have a few questions that have come, a couple directly to me and one I know at least to Peg, and please feel free. And maybe Henry also has some, but I'm going to start and then invite Henry in. And we'll just see what happens. The first one is, any tips for dealing with sleepiness? I get very sleepy every day after the talk, which ends at 1 p.m. my time. Not sitting in person with everyone, it's very tempting to let myself just lie down and take a quick nap. Actually, I think everyone can see this. Is it better to fight with myself to stay awake until the break, or is it better to sleep for 10 minutes? I think there's no problem to follow the invitation of your body for that. You know, if a 10-minute nap is going to revive and allow you to rejoin sitting, whatever's needed. And this in a way is, I mean, I've heard Henry invite this even for in-person retreats, but certainly in our Zoom Zendo, it's possible to, you know, take a sit or whatever part of a sit and lie down, sleep, or do a whole round of walking if sitting is becoming painful or resistant. You know, there is this freedom, and you know, I really appreciate the way this question is. You know, the intention is so clear. So I would say, by all means, feel free to take that nap. If you're sleepy and sitting, and you know, you're inclined to want to keep sitting, you know, this is one of the hindrances. I mean, it can also, as I said, just take care of it, embrace it, allow it, and sleep, rest. But you can address it. I remember somehow vividly that Henry gave a lovely talk on the 5 hindrances and sort of antidotes. And the antidote that I believe he named for dullness or torpor or just sleepiness is awe. You know, just this phrase of this great buzzing energy of awe. And you can oxygenate your sitting, not by pushing through, but, you know, inviting in this sense of wonder and awe, which might be, if you're counting, letting that number be the only thing in the whole world, you know, just thoroughly resting in that number, nothing else. And then this number, or if it's mu, you know, just as Wanshi famously said, you know, practice wonder. He puts this in different ways, but wander into the center of the circle of wonder. I mean, that's, you know, that's here. So this, there, you know, there are ways, but the one way I wouldn't personally recommend is trying to push or force, you know, introduce a kind of pushing against, fighting. I mean, that can work, but it works against this invitation of this practice to do as little as possible, or to allow, just be here. This, as Henry calls it, original love. Um, yeah, there is a kind of, suddenly this phrase from Dogen, Mu is a sun with stone melting power. That's powerful. I don't experience that as pushing against, but just let that sun shine, that melt. All of that said, for all of the power, the beauty, the love, and the possibilities, the capacity of sitting, also that it will change. You can also do that, just hang in there and it will change. But the freedom to say, yeah, what a nice way to absorb and integrate a talk, a little nap. Henry, would you like to say more to that?
He's shaking his head no.
Okay. I think that's plenty. Yeah. So here's one that came to privately. Thank you for these loving questions. This one says, your beautiful talk clarified something huge for me today. I always thought of mindfulness reminders throughout the day, a breath, feeling your feet, tuning into a sound, as sort of landing deeper in the witness mind, which often feels dualistic. But maybe it can also be an invitation to be that sound, not just while sitting, but throughout the day. This is so helpful. But it seems there is a fine line between being one with experience and getting overly identified with it, mistaking it for permanent or personal, feeling more separate. Can you speak to this? For example, as I worry about my parents up in Portland in the unheard of heat, I am watching my sadness, my heart breaking. Sometimes bringing awareness to it amplifies it, and this actually feels freeing. While other times, awareness seems to interrupt it, separate me from it. Hope this makes sense. Yeah, what a beautiful question. And as with so many of these, it has a lot of richness in it for all of us. Yeah, let's see. To be that sound. So, yeah, this no one doing anything, just that can be a wonderful practice off the cushion. Whether it's, a sound as in all the sounds that we hear, the key clicks, all of it, the sounds, or this other, sense of sound, like we talked about seeing with the eyes, the sound of the flavor of that apple you just bit into, nothing but that. That is just a wonderful practice, and you can taste, all these things are happening and no one is doing anything. And all of these experiences, these moments, can kind of help us check in on that. Just bring you right in, basically, to now. Now. Just now. So what about this fine line between being one with experience? That is, that's language is tricky because there's no equation, but we do speak of it this way. I mean, hear it said, just nothing but experience, this immediacy, this intimacy. Joko Beck was trying to point to it in that first chapter of her book. But what about, so just this? And then the question says getting overly identified with it, mistaking it, the justice for permanent or personal, feeling more separate. Yeah, as soon as we do that, I got it. That's it. It's divided. It's gone. Though the wonder of this is the more and more free we are in it, we realize that even it can't really go. It can't even the, I'll never get this, or, divided upon divided, 6 heads on top of my head, even that. But this is a very fair question about practice. I think the key is identified. So I am here having this experience, that I. And then this little equation sneaks in that or wants to, that fixes something that cannot be fixed. I mean, there's the freedom. It cannot be fixed. So how then do we invite ourselves to practice in ways that we can taste that more and more? So this heartfelt example, I worry about my parents. Bringing awareness to it amplifies it. And this feels freeing, absolutely. Allowing, what a, just, of course. And then other times that awareness seems to interrupt it, to separate me from it. That for me would be when it becomes an idea, when it becomes a concept, when, again, suddenly there's this distance. I'm here worrying about this rather than this heart just opening. But what nice practice to notice this. So you're already in a position to, as soon as you can see it, you can see through it. It's got this calibration going on, even in the way the question's being asked. So great. Here I am, this awareness has come up, and now I'm getting that that sense of separation. So allow that, notice it, allow it, let it melt into that one heart that is really worried about your parents and all of this really unbearable heat right now. So there's one more, and then I'm going to invite Henry. This kind of goes with it. How can we both allow what is, accept it wholly, and want to change it, to stop the suffering? The questioner says, this has come up before, but how can we both allow what is, accept it wholly, and want to change it, want to stop the suffering? Those aspects clearly coexist, but how? Yeah, without allowing it. If we're just defending ourselves against it somehow, that really shuts down the energy, the clarity, the compassion. It goes together to really face this world, this broken world. Let our hearts break. They're all the way. But it's also always happening. And it's painful, and it's a gift. Not because, oh, it's good for you. No, it's because it's true. And because out of that, there's this capacity to address the needs of the world, this compassion. It's boundless, and you have to find what's yours to do. That's yes, compassion, responsiveness, also skillful means. I've learned a lot from Henry in terms of teaching this, allowing. And what I would say about his teaching, which is so clear, is it's also so recognizable. That, what a nice way to sort of name an antidote to the scaffolding, the grid, the structure, the defenses that we habitually mount, and that we suffer. We suffer those. Such a relief when they fall, or just ease. So, Henry, would you like to say something now?
Actually, Valerie, not terribly, because I'm having such a good time listening to you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. But I think that last point, I mean, it's exactly, I was just sort of thinking just along the same lines as you, actually, that, I mean, nothing can be changed that isn't first sort of allowed as it is. I was remembering actually a mindfulness class some time ago that I was at, led by Daniel Bruce, where he was weaving in some sort of Aikido, I think. And there was a exercise where we're learning to not oppose energy coming at you, but to absolutely sort of allow it and go with it. And maybe a little move can alter its course. But you just, the first step is letting it come. You're working with the energy as it is. I think that's a sort of similar lesson. And it seems to be a principle that's deep in the Zen tradition. We see it again and again, where, of course, I was just thinking actually contrary examples, but I was going to say that there are many, many examples where masters just gently go with what's presenting, and just there's a little turn in the energy, but it's starting with where a student is at. There's this teaching of Yunmen, with this, they say every phrase he said had 3 phrases in it, and one is this phrase. The idea is that it's what do they call it? Oh, Valerie, you may remember this more clearly than me, but one of them was waves.
Wave upon wave.
Yeah, it's like there's a horse wave and a mare wave or something. I can't remember. But so the wave comes and they just follow it with another wave, and it may be smaller, but it's by going with it that change arises. I mean, don't you find that in relationships? I mean, I've found that. I continue to find it every time. I would prefer that my wife, do something sort of slightly differently. It just doesn't work. But if I So okay, this is yeah. She's putting them there, not there in the cupboard. You know, or something. I just I just accept it, and first of all, that's better anyway because I'm just accepting it, and but actually having accepted it, sometimes it just the behavior does actually change anyway, kind of thing. Now, I mean, I know it seems much harder to follow this kind of pattern when we're looking at something like a caste-ridden society that we're living right in the midst of. It seems like it's this isn't something that we want to just um, ride along with, Yunmen style. But even here, it has to begin with opening to what is. And I think probably many of us, myself included, may have had a real resistance even to accepting the situation as it really is. And so just getting educated is already more deeply opening to how it is. And there's so much I mean, I think probably we're not this is really the choir kind of thing. We don't need to probably be persuaded of this, but we know that there are a lot of people who really are driven by the caste system, as some are calling it, of America, really entrenched in it and refuse to even see that there is one. They're so driven by it. And so what are we going to do? We're just going to say sort of oppositionally, no, you can't be like that? Or is there a more skillful way to come at the situation as it is? I mean, and our part for sure, those of us who need to know more about it, we want to be open to learning more about it and understanding it and working from a place of understanding, not from a place of sort of knee-jerk opposition. I mean, really, it is sort of, I suppose it's, something like Gandhi approach of clearly seeing and not going, he actually would not go along with, but he'd do it from his deep groundedness in truth and beauty, truth and love. He was operating from that perspective. And it seems to me this is one of the strange features of Bodhisattva work, is that it operates from a weird perspective that sees the suffering and sees its causes. But the bigger picture, somehow, for the Bodhisattva, which doesn't make rational sense, is that all is well. The Bodhisattva sees the wholeness, which is actually all well. And that brings up compassion, and that inspires action where it's needed. But it defies logic, really, because most of us sort of want to help because things look bad. The Bodhisattva wants to help because things look good. Yeah. It's really, I mean that's not to deny, it's not to deny the manifest flames engulfing us, but it's even those flames somehow, even the things that we vitiate and and don't want to see, somehow they're part of a bigger vision, and which is not to deny the need to work toward the good, to bring things into alignment with the good. I don't know, Valerie, I don't know whether this is off track. But...
Oh, no, I think it's right on track and quite beautiful. And just at the end, this other of Unmon's koans, every day is a good day. Right. That Bodhisattva koan, the only way to be with it, work with that koan, is through the portal of suffering, to really see it thoroughly immersed in this broken world. Cries of this world are my very own. There's just no, and yet there is this joy. And then comes the freedom to more and more lovingly, skillfully, but urgently even help. How to, this is a little different, but there happened to be an article that I was just sort of, the Sunday Times was open on our table while I had my lunch, and I didn't rifle through the paper. It wasn't that kind of day, but it happened that this article that was folded to was about an African-American man who's in a band, has been for a long time, that plays regularly in a white supremacist club. They're booked into this club. And lots of members of the KKK are part of the audience. And the story was that this man, African-American musician, had befriended over the years a number of members of the KKK by just talking. And the man said, well, I start out listening. And one conversation that was, I didn't read this closely, but this member of the, card carrying member, cape and all having member hood of the KKK told him in a conversation at the bar that, well, there's all this black crime. Blacks have a crime gene. They are innately, evolutionarily disposed to crime. And the musician listened to that and said, there is a lot of crime. And there's a lot of crime in my community. And he said, but it's interesting that mass murderers are overwhelmingly white. White people must have a mass murder gene. The KKK member said, well, that just doesn't make any sense. And by then they talked enough that the musician said, yeah, well, it makes as much sense as, thinking that Black people have a gene toward crime, disposes them to crime. And the guy got it. And the story was that this musician has a collection of capes and hoods from people who have left the KKK. And what it's a skillful means, and it's also just wow. It's courage and it's love. It's just reality. It's undefended, but meeting it, like you said in that Aikido, I mean, it's a little bit of taking that energy and just redirecting it. It gave me a kind of hope, and it was not hope. It's all going to work out. I meant one issue for many of us that I hear so much about, it's written about all the time, is how do I talk to people who see the world so radically differently how can we even talk to each other? How can we even have these conversations? And this was a way. It was an example. So it also, of course, here we are in this retreat where we've been hearing about listening and hearing, and it just resonated with that as well. Let's see. Oh, Henry, maybe you could speak to this. Can you speak to the process for getting a teacher and the process of being a student on this lay Zen path?
Well, I think, let's see. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. At Mountain Cloud, you can, we got a page on becoming a student, or a little paragraph or two on it on the website. So you can just take a look at that. I mean, by and large, well, I mean, what it looks like for those of us who work that way, I mean, is on the lay side, is that it's quite nice. I mean, you every so often, every couple of weeks or once a month or whatever it might be, you have a check-in with the teacher. I mean, on whatever rhythm it sort of seems appropriate. And when you can, you do a retreat. Under normal circumstances, when retreats are in person, you get an interview or a short meeting known as a dokusan with a teacher. Maybe could be several times in the course of a week-long retreat. So you get sort of on some kind of regular basis, you get in practice meetings with a teacher, and but otherwise you're kind of you're practicing in home, workplace, whatever, in the context of daily life. And it seems a very good way to train, actually, to have there's a traditional Zen way of training whereby you'd be in a monastery for several years, and at a certain point they kind of throw you out and you have to live a normal life, and normal lay life, and it's some kind of next step to be able to integrate what you've learned of practice while in a sequestered environment, in a lay environment. In our school, so to speak, Sambo Zen, you do them concurrently, and you have these hits of sequestered time on retreat, and then you're back in your sort of ordinary daily context, doing our best to live what we're training, what we're discovering in our training, to live it. Yeah.
Thanks. Peg, do you want to read? I think you have a question to everyone.
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of them. I'll read the first one. How to deal with despondency. I have a pattern of giving up and, quote, I can't do this, unquote. I know this is the play of the ego, so my practice can be patchy. I find it a bit hard to keep practicing when I have no experience of non-ego or oneness, and so it's a vicious circle. Any advice is welcome.
Go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, Valerie, if I could just jump in on that. I mean, one lens that could be useful here would be, don't worry about ego. Why not think of it as doubt? That you're doubting your sort of capacity for practice, that the despondency perhaps makes you doubt the value of practice, or your suitability for it, or your capacity for it. That might then increase the despondency. I mean, it's quite a common thing to get a bit despondent now and then, and it's less common to get very despondent very often for very long, but it does happen, and there's a spectrum. But despondency is not in itself a sort of aberrant human characteristic. Everybody gets it to some degree. What we just don't really want is to have it to the degree where it's really impeding our life, and our capacity for cultivating well-being. And if that's the case, it's probably worth, it may well be worth, checking in with some of the 1,001 forms of therapy. I mean, I don't know, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but that's, there's a ton of wisdom around despondency, despair, depression these days, and you don't have to. I mean, I think there are ways of skillfully dealing with it, so it's less intrusive and invasive and obstructive, really. But I mean, if it's not too incapacitating, practice can be very, very useful, very, very good way of sort of coming to know it better. And the one sort of catch-all method is always is for looking into your body. Where is this feeling in your body? That's a way of undercutting the thought loops that will be generating it and sustaining it. So get in the body. That's one shorthand for a way of dealing with it. And another actually is get that book, A Guide to the Good Life. It's on Stoic philosophy by Bill Irvin. It's a very nice little book. The Stoics were great about this kind of thing because they understood the importance of how we think in how we feel. This is actually a generally rather under-regarded aspect of our suffering. In the modern West, and especially in sort of practice circles, we got so into the body, along the lines I was just talking about, but deeper too, that we forget actually cognitive side of it is extremely important. The underlying philosophy we have is absolutely critical. You can do loads of somatic work, but if you've still got a sort of despondent philosophy, which is actually just a habit of thought, it's going to keep tripping you up. So I'm just throwing those out as among, like I said, probably 10,001 methods these days.
Great. Thank you. Pet?
Yes, I have another. I'm going to switch it around. When we die, do we awaken? Is there an answer to this question?
I'm thinking about that joke. So this might not be the most helpful response, but somebody asks a Zen master, what happens when we die? What happens after we die? And he says, well, I don't know. And he said, what do you mean you don't know? You're a Zen master. Yeah, but I'm not a dead Zen master. I just like that. I'm sorry. I mean, we could talk about this a lot and quite beautifully, I think. But I take this question to be talking about our physical death and not the great death that that we hear about in this tradition. What about you, Henry?
That's a great response. Yeah. I mean, the main thing I would like to say is don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's all okay. I'm sure of that. Yeah. Quite sure. Oh, really, really sure.
Yeah. Absolutely sure.
Just 100% sure. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really. Even though I'm not dead, I know it's okay.
I absolutely share that. And my dearest friend in Germany, Maria Habito, dear friend to Henry, her mother, elderly mother, died just before this retreat started. Such a blessing, mystery, but living, I mean, this real event. And 100% okay. We probably should go on, or else we won't go on.
Here's another that came to everyone. It says, "Dear Valerie," though. Thank you so much for the wonderful Show. Could you say something more about the advice to just be the anger or be the anxiety in relation to some of the mindfulness teachings, or even Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching not to identify with the anger as yourself, but rather to recognize it, see it as not self, and as a passing emotion, and then to investigate and take care of it as a mother would their crying child, in his words?
Yeah, what a beautiful question. I don't see those as antithetical. To be the anger, the anxiety, fear, you can taste this. Say it's fear, nothing but fear. I mean, if it comes up and you have the chance and practice, a very strong emotion, just to look around, let it be. You can look all around in that and see that there's nothing there. I mean, it's also anger, there's no one there being angry. It's just, but how do you, at the same time, our practice that allows us to do that is this great allowing. And I mean, in the times in my life when I've been able to sort of marvel at that, and the freedom that comes from it. It's not that, oh, I'm no longer afraid, I'm no longer anxious, but wow, it doesn't have a hold, it doesn't have a grip. It's just there. That comes out of this compassion. That I could say is like the love of a mother. It's very beautiful, and so I think these can both operate, and maybe Henry can parse it a little, but it's this one world. Henry, you're so good at this. Maybe to say a word.
No, I think you spoke beautifully to that, Valerie, and I could only muddy the waters if I said anything.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Are we near the end, Peg?
Yeah, pretty much. There's one more chat, and it's to you, but it's more of a comment than really a question.
I had one question that maybe quick word. What a beautiful talk today in 4 days. Thank you. Any advice on launching back into work and life and keeping all of this beautiful compassion we've talked about over the past 4 days? Life can sweep me up so quickly. Sitting helps, but would love any more advice. Well, the intention is there. The opening is there. One thing you can do is just notice who's doing this. You know, it's something that can come. I mean, after a retreat, there is, we should be watchful and kind of mindful and kind of careful, like that mother with her child, to let the momentum sort of seep in to life. Of course, life is going to not be like retreat, exactly, no way. But just checking, is there anyone doing anything? All these things are happening. And what is that if it's not compassion? You know, that there is anything at all. Everywhere you turn, whatever's arising, there's the compassion. So, and also there, what a wonderful chance for practice. Henry, have a word.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Valerie. The one little sort of footnote you might just have is like this sense of, I like thinking of a water system that, this planet has its water system with the oceans and the seas, the lakes, the rivers, the streams, obviously the clouds and the rain and the gutters and the puddles. They're all water. We come to a retreat and we maybe we're getting out onto a lake or onto the sea or into the ocean even a bit. And fantastic, I'm getting a taste of the ocean. But actually, even when it's a glass of water, it's the same water. So it doesn't always have to be the sort of the big ocean. Just it's still water. So I wanted to say that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Just maybe we'll have a slightly shortened last sit, Peg, so that we have a chance to end and have some goodbyes.
Very good.
Thank you, Henry.